until we have a board or commissioners, in fact, but I just want to
Okay, got
respect
it.
that we have quorum now.
Okay, thank you very much, Caleb.
I see Sarah and Tracy are online. Just a heads up that our newest commissioner, Lori Knapp, is joining us as well. Ashley, welcome. I think Therese, our staff person, just joined us.
And my computer says 9, so we can start if you want.
Yeah, we are still expecting, and we have Mayor Becky Daggett, and then Nadine Hart did RSCP earlier or last month. I have not heard from her since then, but she did RSVP. So, but Brenda as chair, it's yours whenever you want it.
Great. We'll go ahead and get started. Happy December to all of you. I'm calling the meeting to order. First thing we'll do is a roll call. And I'll read your name if you just reply that you're here, please. Vice Chair Moses Malazzo.
I'm here.
Thank you, Moses. Mayor Becky Daggett.
Here.
Ashley Page.
Present.
Thank you, Ashley. Lorena, do you prefer to be called Lori?
Lori.
Lori Knapp, welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
Nadine, not here as of yet. We'll watch for her. Tatum Covey.
I'm here.
Thank you, Tatum. And city staff. Anna? I don't see Anna.
Anna,
Caleb?
Keith, and Sam are none of them will be present today.
Okay,
So.
I'll mark them off. Anna, Keith, and Samantha. Okay. Cherise?
I'm here.
Thank you. And Kurt? Kurt is not, did you say Kurt would not be here?
He's here. I'm guessing he's logged in.
Okay, good. And Sarah, you're here. That's excellent. And Tracy?
Here.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
It's okay. I understand that.
I vouched for you.
Okay, so I'll read the public comment line, and then we'll have Lori tell us a little bit about herself. At this time, any member of the public may address the board on any subject within the board's jurisdiction that is not on this meeting agenda. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on an item that is not listed on the prepared agenda. The commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the board, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that the matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the board on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. And I don't see any public members with us today. Lori, welcome to the commission. And would you like to tell us a little bit about you?
I am a realtor in town, just started that last year, so don't really know what else to say. I'm a bit familiar with Charisse and Tracy. I've been getting the Section 8 benefits for many years now, so that's
wonderful.
Kind of my angle here.
Good. Well, we welcome you to the board, and if you have any questions during the proceedings, just please ask. Okay, so we'll start with approval of the October 17th meetings. And I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. I have to go turn it off. I'll be right back.
This is Moses. I will move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you, Moses. Is there a second?
This is Ashley. I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oops, this is Ashley. I'll second.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the October 17th, 2024 meeting as presented. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or lifting
Aye.
your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We're on to action items. So we have a resolution 2024-10, Section 8, Administrative Plan. And it's a mainstream update. And I'm going to turn everything over to Kurt. It's all you, Kurt.
Thank you. At least I remembered how to unmute now.
There you go.
So mainstream is our vouchers that were granted to be able to serve families where there is a disabled household member who is under age 62. So it's a very specific targeted program. And recently HUD felt compelled to change some of the rules. Basically, what happened was they said we could no longer have a residency preference only for the mainstream program. It's kind of a bummer because we figured out that we had about 2/3 of the people who had applied for mainstream did not live in Flagstaff. So this is going to present challenges for our Section 8 team. Sorry, Charisse. And moving forward. So we did have to incorporate that into the plan. The other thing that is associated with that is, and this is allowed, if they don't live in Flagstaff when the voucher is issued, they have to lease up in Flagstaff for a year before they can go elsewhere. So that is one major change. Any questions about that? Okay. The other big, yes.
I also do not know how to unmute. I have a question, Kurt. So do we have current vouchers that are issued for people that are living outside of Flagstaff?
No.
Okay. Okay.
And I know the Section 8 team just made a very big push to batch out some of the mainstream that live here so we can get that started, because under our policy, we don't start this until we get a new batch.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. The other thing that it changes is vouchers will now be issued for a minimum 120 days, and 90-day extensions must be given. The first 90-day extension is almost automatic. Well, it is automatic. After that, it is on a case-by-case basis to be determined by the housing authority whether or not there's an actual legitimate housing search going on. This wouldn't matter much, except that it does tie up the voucher so that we can't issue it to another family. So those are the two big major changes that we have.
This is Tatum. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything right. So essentially, we've been kind of pigeonholed into adopting a policy that we know that isn't our favorite thing, but is not a choice, that we do have to accept that we can't do local preference for vouchers. Is that correct?
Partially. This is
Okay.
only for the mainstream.
Got it.
The remainder of our programs, well, actually, it's only the general purpose vouchers that have a residency preference now.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many vouchers is that, Kurt? You might have said, but I missed that.
I didn't, and it's because I'm not sure. I think it's 50, but Charisse can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, we currently have 50. We have about 29 currently being utilized. We sent out about 250 records requests, we got about 75 back, and I'm not exactly sure how many of those were mainstream. We're crossing our fingers that we can get the other 11 out of that batch to lease up, and that way the only time we'll have to deal with the mainstream non-preference is if we have to refill that voucher for some reason.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any, oh, Sarah, you had a question.
There is one more piece to this that we are working on as time allows, around the idea that we can work with agencies, state and local agencies, to specify vouchers for use with, we were approached by DES. And so we haven't been able to get into the nitty gritty with them about what that relationship looks like, et cetera, and how we can do that. We know it's done in other jurisdictions. And so there is a possibility, leaving it out there, possibility that we'll be able to retain some modicum of local preference within working with the state and local agencies, where we accept referrals directly for them. But that requires memorandum of understanding, et cetera. And we're just not there yet on these. And so we're up against a deadline to put this piece in place. And I want to commend both the board, thank you for postponing this to this meeting, and our Section 8 staff in working so hard to identify as many local households as possible to serve prior to us then having to issue the next tranche of interest to go back out.
Moses?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure how to formulate this question, but I wanted to start before I forgot what I was going to ask. Are there enough? It sounds like we are not utilizing all of the vouchers that we have available to us right now, and I'm curious if that's a supply or demand issue. Do we not have enough supply of voucher qualified housing, or do we not have enough demand? I would assume we have more than enough demand, and I'm just curious why we're not utilizing all of the vouchers that are available at the moment, or am I misunderstanding?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to start and then I'll probably punt to Charisse. It's a careful balancing act. When we are appropriated funding, we are appropriated funding in a lump sum that must cover the housing assistance payment amounts. It's not $5 or this much, $5 is way too low. This much money for 1 bedrooms, this much money for 4 bedrooms. Those price differences are very different. And so it's a very careful balancing act of staying within our budget and issuing vouchers. A lot of agencies, especially this year, because of raising rents, are in what's called shortfall, where they don't have enough money to cover their expenses. We are not in shortfall. And part of that is being careful of how many we issue out at what time. The numbers Charisse gave are partially a function of identifying households that meet the criteria of non-elderly disabled. And so there are other priority other special purpose vouchers. And so elderly, disabled, et cetera, have different prioritization. And so it's been somewhat of a challenge. I'll let Charisse talk about why that challenge exists of identifying the non-elderly disabled households. The other piece is we have a lot of people on our waiting list that have declared that they fit local preference. But when we send out the background checks requirements, we send out that it's time to do your income qualification and prove you're a local resident, they fall off. And so I'll let Charisse talk about what our return rate is in success. We'll send out hundreds and get this many back that are actually eligible. But part of that is also balancing budgets.
How many do we have on the waiting list currently?
I'll tell you that in just a moment, or Caleb can pull it up. Charisse, you want to talk a little bit about the challenge with issuing mainstream?
Yeah, so we were doing just a full pool of our wait list just so that we can capture some of those mainstream applicants. What we have found is like I stated earlier, we just sent out about 270. We only got or 250 and we only received about 75 back. So we're looking at a third return on people even responding to those background checks. And then we have to look at those 75 and figure out which ones of those have claimed mainstream eligibility. Then when we get to that eligibility process, we have to verify if it's not obvious, if they don't, if they're between that 18 and under 62, if they are truly disabled or handicapped. And then that verification process starts if that's needed. And so then that could lead that 75 to maybe only 5 of those are, mainstream qualified. And so I mean, if you think about it, it's like almost less than 1% of people that we're trying to get into our program that would potentially qualify for mainstream, and then they end up not qualifying or they don't come through. So it has been a challenge.
So would it be beneficial to have a separate wait list for mainstream, or is that not allowed?
It is allowed, and it is one of the things that this particular regulation change has called out. Our waitlist software allows us to sort by self-declared. Somebody say this better than me.
They are able to declare on the application that they're asking for mainstream. It's a separate box. So we are able to, in fact, filter those out, keeping in mind, as Sharice said, that frequently when people say things, they're not able to back it up.
So we are able to pull adult households under 65 with self-identified disabilities out of our wait list and send directly to those.
Okay.
And so maintaining 2 separate wait lists, we determined isn't necessary because our software provides us the ability to do essentially that already.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank
can I follow up with that?
Go right ahead, Moses.
Shoot. Sorry, my coffee's still kicking in.
Yes, I hear you.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to type it in because I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Because the chat is not recorded as part of the meeting itself, I'll read what we have in there. Caleb had added, we have 2,280 applicants in total on the waiting list. Kurt further refined to say we have 690 on the mainstream list and 194 have claimed that they live here locally. And so getting down into with that 1/3 return rate, it makes those numbers smaller.
Yeah.
We are not the only agency that has struggled with mainstream and identifying actually eligible households, which is part of the reason for HUD changing how these regulations, not changing how they're implemented, changing the regulations surrounding them. Our performance rate on mainstream is actually significantly higher than other agencies in the state and the nation. HUD wasn't impressed when I pointed that out to say we have enough local. We just need time to work down through that. And yeah, there weren't even kudos. It was like, well, then you need to be importing people. And of course, one of our challenges is, especially with disabled households, is we get calls all the time from folks who say, my doctor recommended that I move to a warmer climate. Folks not understanding that Flagstaff is not a warmer climate, that if you have some medical challenges that involve oxygen or heart issues, 7,000 feet is not the spot that you necessarily want to be. And so as we, at some point, will get to a time when we are sending out requests for background checks, et cetera, to folks that are not local, we've talked about including a short fact sheet about Flagstaff. There is, some folks don't quite understand what our dynamics are like up here, and they're trying to get out of snow or they're trying to get to a healthier environment. And so we've discussed putting a introduction to Flagstaff that goes in that packet, so that they are more familiar with what the area they're seeking housing in.
Thanks,
I would
Sarah.
be
And that
oh, go ahead, Moses.
that reminded me what my question was, which is, do we have any statistics of how many people, and I suspect we don't, how many people or households might have been legitimately claiming residency at the time that they've put their names on the list, but by the time they are called up to finish the documentation, they found housing that doesn't qualify them for residency? Because, you know, everybody needs housing as quickly as possible, and so they're going to choose to take whatever's available rather than wait on the waiting list. And so they may have been qualified for residential status at the time that they filed, but then by the time that their name comes up at the top of the list, they no longer qualify. Do we have any idea how often that happens?
I do believe that's a number we've been directly tracking. Remember, our residency preference includes living or working within our zip codes. And so let's say they moved out to Kachina Village, that's still local, or if they even went as far as Williams, but are working here within the community, that is still local.
Right, okay.
So am I wrong? Are we tracking that number of people? I don't think that we are.
We're not, but it's not. It's
It's
maybe
not super
4 or 5
common.
a month.
Okay, so it doesn't seem to be a large number. It seems like it'd be difficult to track directly. You might have to do some indirect kind of guesses, but I was just curious if we have people sort of slipping through that crack in the waiting list, but it sounds like maybe not.
My understanding, because I've asked similar questions of when someone declares local preference, is households that, of course, are desperate for housing but don't live here. And so we've contacted households saying, hey, it's time to follow up. It's time for your background checks and your further eligibility criteria. And they say things like, well, I can't get there for my interview. Well, okay. Well, it's because I'm in Illinois. Okay, so you're not local. And it's hard to fault households that are desperate for housing assistance and checking every box that they feel may make them eligible. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're verifying those local preference eligibility pieces so that our programs are doing what our board, et cetera, has set out for us to do, which is to provide a local preference at any time possible.
Right.
Moses,
Thank you.
go ahead.
I was just saying,
have one.
thank you.
Oh, thank you, Moses. I have one more question on the topic, but not really following the topic. So the people that we reach out to that are not local that would have to then lease up, did you say within 90 days, Kurt? Is that what I heard you say?
Okay, they have 120 days to
Oh,
lease up,
120
and they're
days.
granted extensions of 90 days.
That was where the 9 days came in.
Yeah, so that puts them in a minimum of 6 months, give or take.
Do we explain to them about not only the cost of housing here, obviously, but the cost of living? I mean, do we give anybody a heads up that this is a kind of an expensive place to live?
That's
do
what we
do
were
with
talking
that?
about, that intro sheet that would go into. Right now, we have not started qualifying households that don't claim a local preference. And so when we get to the point where we need to send out these to folks in other states, et cetera, it'll be that background sheet of, did you know Flagstaff?
Yeah, I just feel
X,
like
Y,
they
and
need
Z.
to have a warning, that.
Yeah. And
it
we
may be
do
difficult
verbally
for
say
them.
it all the time when folks are calling in, I encourage you to look at the rental prices. Even when we interview staff that doesn't live in Flagstaff, we end with, have you had the opportunity to look at what our local housing prices look like, so that people are coming in as informed as possible. And we encourage folks on the phone or when they come into the counter, I said it, take a look at the local rental prices and see if this is a fit for you. Flagstaff is an expensive community. So
that's good. I just felt like we needed to give them that heads up. That's good that we're doing that. Good.
We do what we can.
Okay.
People don't always listen.
No, they don't. Anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, I think we can ask for a motion to approve the resolution to amend the Section 8 administrative plan. And you have a copy of that in your packet, by the way. What, do you need me to read it, Caleb?
No.
No.
No. Okay, thank you. And can I get a motion to approve it, please?
This is Moses. I will move to approve the resolution to amend the Section 8 administrative plan as written.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is Tatum. I can second.
Thank you, Tatum. It has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 24-12. The resolution to amend Section 8 administrative plan, or admin plan as it's called. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Okay, informational items. NISPIRE, is that what? NISPIRE V inspection standards. Charisse, it's assigned to you, so you're all set.
Hi, good morning, all.
Morning.
I just wanted to touch base just on what Inspire is and how it's going to change effective the first of the year. We started as demo in 2018 with what was called UPCSV, which I don't know how they come up with all these long acronyms, but it was Uniform Physical Condition Standards. And now it's Inspire V, which is National Standards for the Physical Inspection for Real Estate. What this is a new protocol and guidance that has been pushed out by HUD that now states that this is to keep everyone that inspects kind of like on the same path. And so I wanted to just go over a little bit about the inspectable areas because when we were doing UPCSV, we had about 10 inspectable areas that we had to focus on. They've switched or changed gear to now it's just down to 3 inspectable areas. And those inspectable areas are pretty simple. It starts with the unit itself, inside, which means like the common areas, and then outside. And so they're really focusing on, or want us as inspectors to focus more on health and safety of units. And so the unit itself just refers to like interior components of individual dwellings. So that's where people live. The inside just is the common areas, building systems that are not inside the living area. And this includes like your playgrounds, your sidewalks, air conditioning units, or that's outside, sorry. And then the inside are like your laundry facilities, your workout rooms, the mailbox area. And so those 3 different areas are what our inspectors are going to be going out and focusing more on. Now we've been demoing, we've been as a demo with HUD since 2018. And so we've kind of been doing the UPCSV and the Inspire now since then. So it's all of our inspectors are trained to it. And it's just supposed to be more like a conformity so that if I go out and do it, the person that did it before me, we're gonna find the exact same deficiencies if there were any deficiencies. So that's kind of what what the standards are changing to. Then I also just kind of wanted to point out why HUD is doing that. So Inspire's priorities, and I'm reading this off of the website, so these are not my words. Inspire's priorities for residents are to have a year-round focus with a unit focus approach. And so and prioritize residents for health and safety. So again, HUD is now really focusing on the health and safety. And it's not going to, it will not be determined on each inspector's opinion. So it's all going to be, there's an app that we use. It guides you if you're going to fail something. It goes through and says, this is what you're failing for. And then it gives you a list of items of, is it X, is it Y, is it Z? And then it's also leveled in, like, there's 3 levels. It's like pass, fail, emergency. And so it's going to give us those modules to follow. And so anyone who goes out and does these inspections will be able to follow that protocol. Inspire's priorities for our housing authorities is to have an increased inspection consistency. So again, that just goes along with whoever goes out and does that inspection. We're all seeing and failing and passing for these same items. Of course, we have to collaborate with HUD, provide input for standards. So if we aren't in agreement with this, they've been doing this since I think it came out in 2015, and they started demoing in 2018. But there has been a full-blown comment period where if you don't like this, try this out. So we've been very lucky to be able to provide that input to HUD and say, hey, this doesn't work, or why does this say X, and does it mean Z? So that has been very helpful that they've allowed us to provide that information. We'll have access to the inspection data. It'll allow us to also provide reports if needed. And then our priorities for inspectors, it's electronic based. So everything is on either our laptop or within our software. Increased inspection accuracy, clearly defined inspection standards and protocols, which there's a whole toolkit on the HUD website that I look at all the time just to make sure that, we are making still in following that protocol. And just to make sure that if there's any changes that we are aware of those changes. And then HUD they want to be able to have accessibility to our reports, and that they just want to make sure that we are aligning, like all housing authorities nationwide are aligning with that protocol. So that's kind of what Inspire is in a nutshell. There's so much more information to provide, but we could be here for a few hours. So I'll just leave it at that. So any questions on Inspire?
I don't see any questions. You did a good job. Thank you. Well, actually, I could come up with a question. Are the inspectors our staff members, or do we hire contract people for that?
We have one. Well, there's a few of us, so we have one inspector. He inspects all low-income public housing and Section 8. Myself and my co-worker Alec, we are both trained in Inspire, and then the new lady that we are hiring, Tracy, she's Inspire certified. So we're all ready. So we have it covered. Now it's just getting our software on board. So
great. Thank you very much for the presentation, Cherise.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we will move to the annual and biannual inspections presentation by Caleb.
I asked to introduce this item a little bit before Caleb goes ahead to present. I wanted to make the board aware that these items are on the agenda at the request of another board member, Miss Nadine Hart, who it appears was not able to join us today. And since she's not here to introduce what her concerns were surrounding the agenda item requests were to change what we can within Inspire. There are things that are kind of silly sometimes that we have to inspect, or things where we're like, okay, yes, is there a sink stopper? It's on the list. We must abide by it. We don't have the ability to change these inspection standards. We do not. We either comply with them or we risk our program. And so they are developed by HUD. They are utilized nationwide. And Inspire, we signed up to be a demonstration agency, so we had the ability to try it out and have input, as we qualify as a big agency because we have more than 250 public housing units. It's a definition of big, and small is based in public housing. But we are a smaller agency in essence. And so we sometimes get picked for these demo programs because we can offer somewhat of a unique perspective. We don't have staff coming out of our ears bored, wondering what to do. Everybody has multiple responsibilities and jobs, and so fitting these in is important. The other piece is that one of the things that I particularly was excited about with moving from UPCSV to Inspire is that it has a more definitive piece of de minimis level of, previously it's like, well, there's a hole in the wall. Now there's a guidance on how big is the hole, because a hole, I think we can all think of a hole that's this big, bigger than my head, is very different than the lock on the door handle punctured a small spot in the wall. So it removes some of that discretion for inspectors, but also clarified that piece of here's how we have to classify things. The item that Caleb is about to talk about is the second request from the other board member. Has to do with her request for the board to consider or to think about going to inspections every 2 years instead of annually. And so Caleb's going to cover what that looks like. We do have some information on when we've tried this in the past, et cetera. But that's the nexus of why these items are on the agenda today, as well as it's always good to share additional detailed information with the board and provide an educational opportunity of things of like, what is Inspire? What in the heck does that mean? And why does it start with an N? Which took me forever. I still probably type it wrong. So thank you for letting me introduce this before Caleb jumps in.
Sure. Moses, did you have a question before we go to Caleb?
I do, and I'm sorry, Sarah, but I'm wondering if it might make sense to put this off to next meeting in case, so that the other board member can be present for this presentation since they requested that it be given. I don't know if that makes sense or not. It's just an idea.
Thank you, Moses. There have been multiple agenda requests over the past year and a half, and typically in the past, when the person Nadine has made multiple requests over time, we've been able to. This will fulfill all of them. There have been other meetings where those requests have been discussed without her present. She did RSVP for this meeting. It was on the agenda, and we have quite a large item to tackle for our next meeting. I am thankful that these meetings are recorded and can be reviewed. And if she has any questions, we would welcome them at the next one as well. We are not seeking solid direction from the board. Some head nods would be fine, or to get a sense of, would you like us to bring this forward as an action item, et cetera. But I did want to express, the other reason I'm reading her email in my mind is that to go to biannual inspections, that inspections are stressful for tenants and voucher holders, that it takes time for the landlord, it takes time for the tenant, et cetera. And then some inconsistencies in inspection. And as you heard from Charisse, we've transitioned from one methodology to another. So staff is learning as we go along with the new methodology.
Right. And this today is purely informational. We're not going to be giving any kind of direction or voting on anything. So, okay.
Not voting. We are, if folks are interested in us revisiting this in a more detailed way, of course we will be open to that, but we do have a recommendation along these lines as well. But there is no formal vote associated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we're ready for Caleb then.
All right, I'm going to try this present in Teams button and see what happens. All right. Are folks seeing the inspections annual and biannual options?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. we already had an excellent introduction to what the Inspire inspection information is for our purposes. I'm going to go and turn my camera on. And so I wanted to address those particular concerns about annual and biannual inspections. We have this option, but we wanted to discuss what our own experiences was with a little bit of an explanation. This very short presentation will reference back to Sharice's presentation before going on to the types and frequency of our inspections, our own organizational experiences, recommendations that we have based on that experience, and then discussion. So thank you, Sharice, for providing your own experience. Sharice has been in the field doing these Inspire inspections before. She can speak on them as well. There are many resources through the HUD website, as well as in-person trainings to train staff on the new Inspire V inspection standards as well. Most of the details in this presentation are pulled right out of our policy document for Section 8. So if you have questions, like that policy document is published online. I was really hoping to have a bit larger text. Let me catch up. We see 3 regular inspections and then a few different special inspections. Before a move-in, we have an initial inspection. This must be completed in order to provide assistance for that client and sign off on the paperwork and the housing assistance payments to the landlord. So we're ensuring that the unit is satisfactory and meeting health and safety standards as described in the Inspire V inspection standards. Currently, we also do the annual inspections. We're checking to see that those units continue to uphold those expectations and to address any concerns that might become problematic in the future. As Sarah pointed out, there are different tiers on what these findings can be. And so ideally, we're finding any findings are easily resolved. There can be biannual inspections. We've primarily used these biannual inspections in special circumstances. They still fill that same role as the annual inspections, and they come with benefits and costs as well. We will see special inspections when there's requested by the owner, by the assisted family, potentially by third parties, or by HUD themselves. So we've had opportunities with the organization to do both annual and biennial inspections. And so with our annual inspections, these are preferred by the CFHA staff. They help identify health and safety issues sooner, just like anything that can go without attention. As was mentioned, a hole in the wall left by a doorknob can be pretty easily patched, but it is likely to degrade and grow over time. And this is true for any kind of home maintenance needs. So rather find a drip than a downpour. This also helps us uphold those HUD standards with that citation. This protects CFHA from quality control finding. This is something that goes back to our experience with biennial inspections, is that they can open us up to quality control issues when we are inspected by third parties. Anecdotally, these are preferred by landlords and service providers. We don't have measurements on that, but we've had conversations leading into this presentation to get a sense of that as well. But the other aspect is it helps us maintain dialogue with landlords. With our clients, we may, if a client doesn't have income and asset changes, if the landlord doesn't make rent changes, the communication with landlords may be limited, or may until we do these inspections. And having that annual inspection helps us maintain that relationship more effectively. And we've had other conversations with our board about that role of landlord housing authority communication and how important that is for the success of our landlords, for the comfort of our landlords, and the success of our assisted families. I'm cruising along. I try not to plug too much information into these slides. With biennial inspections, we've used these when we've had short staffing, as well as with COVID lockdowns. There are benefits to these. It frees up that staff time. When staff time is short, they can focus on the recertifications. They can keep things moving along in terms of income and changes, making sure that rent's adjusted. That's still a priority, regardless of the inspection standards. But when there's only so many hours in the week, it does have that resource for it, or that benefit. There are fewer landlord commitments, and has been discussed already, fewer resident commitments when we are doing those biannual inspections. However, some of the drawbacks include those issues that would have been spotted within that annual inspection can grow in scale. It does mean there can be less communication with the landlord. There can be less interaction with the clients, and then potential for non-compliance and quality control findings. This is something else that's been discovered in the past is when we are relying on biannual inspections, it can mean that when we do quality control inspections to make sure we're doing our jobs right, there's more findings because things can get missed the less you're looking at them. Now, we're not looking for any action items. This is strictly informational, but the recommendations based on staff conversations and our own organizational experience is that inspections help ensure the health, safety, compliance, and communication of our program, of our partners in this with housing choice vouchers. They help us uphold CFHA protocol as flexible and responsive. One reason I bring this up is because right now we have the flexibility to choose based on our staffing capacity, based on our the special circumstances that do arise. But by saying we must do one thing or the other, it can tie staff's hands. It can limit that protocol and limit that responsiveness. These annual inspections are encouraged to be maintained as a standard to address these concerns more regularly. And the biannual inspections are only something we would be using during these extraordinary circumstances, such as staffing challenges or pandemic events and things like that. We don't know what the next one would look like, but special circumstances do arise, and having that flexibility is valuable for us.
Thank you, Caleb. Questions, comments?
This is Tatum. I have a comment. I just wanted to kind of voice support for the annual inspection because I know in my own experience as a nonprofit housing provider that I think that the finding like the small fixes and like sometimes people don't notice when there's like a leak or something like small happening in their unit. And so it's a really great opportunity to kind of fix things and make sure that people are getting their homes taken care of in a timely manner because sometimes it's just not reported as often as we would like. And so I think it's a really good opportunity to make sure that we're providing the services that we need to. And I know that notice is always being given as well, that it's not ever a surprise for folks too. So although it can feel invasive, and I know as a renter myself that like I'm lucky that I have a good landlord and that they do give me notice and follow the law. But it's important to be able to have that communication as well.
Thank you, Tatum. Moses?
Yeah, I was basically going to say what Tatum said, but Tatum said it much better than I could, so.
I wish someone would come inspect to my house every year. Yeah, I agree with Tatum and Moses that an annual inspection could head off a lot of maybe more costly things that need to be repaired, because as things set that are not corrected, it just usually gets worse. So I think, and I do understand Nadine saying that it is, maybe inconvenient and or uncomfortable for the residents, but it's really for their benefit, I feel. That's Anybody else? Thank you, everybody that presented there. So do we need to recommend that I mean, we don't need to do anything if we just think it should be annually, right?
This is strictly information item. I'm not hearing any
Yeah.
other motion from the board or support for other action at this time. So
Okay.
this is strictly informational.
Moses?
I do have a question. You know, these meetings are public, but we know very well that regardless of what time we choose, unless it's like 9 p.m., many of the residents of the housing authorities, under the housing authorities purview, are not able to attend these meetings. So I wonder if there's been any attempt by staff to get an idea of what residents think as an aggregate as to whether or not there should be annual or biannual inspections.
Thank you for the question, Moses. We have not, and part of that is a strong management decision. We had a HUD inspector after we went to the 2-year inspections the first time, which was, Sharice and I talked about this morning, probably about 8 years ago, where we gave it a shot. And as part of the being a demonstration project, we had a HUD inspector come in to train on what new protocols look like, et cetera. And we had upwards of 90% of those units fail upon reinspection that had been on a 2-year schedule. And that takes a ton of time for us, the landlords. It means that the clients have not been living or have been living in units that don't meet basic health and safety standards. And so the HUD inspector said, I mean, he had inspected for us many times, and he spoke probably a little more casually than others. He said, "Don't do this." He said, "Every time I see this, it's problematic. It's problematic." And so we have not asked, mainly based in the sense of maintaining our responsibility as the agency that is providing the housing assistance to ensure that the people that we serve are living in safe, habitable conditions. And so working on guidance from HUD, working on our own staff's input, and the relationship with the landlord piece was also a critical piece of that discussion when we went back to annual inspections pre-COVID, is property management teams at complexes change regularly. And so for our staff to be out there, making those connections, speaking with people, speaking with the resident, a lot of questions get asked when housing authority staff is there for an inspection. Well, I've been thinking about, what about? And that relationship piece, particularly with landlords, because our opportunities to communicate with them, other than, you know, we hear from them if for some reason there was a delay in the HAP payment because of electronic transfer, whatever. Other than that, there's not a lot of communication other than re-signing of annual documents. That relationship and that conversation that can happen with property management or landlords is really, really critical to us maintaining participating landlords, so that they know that we're there. It is a partnership between us. They're providing the housing, we're providing payment, and it helps build that relationship with the landlord as well. And so for those reasons, it was a management decision, not only by me, informed by our entire team, that's like, this isn't working. And here are the spots where it's not working and it's not serving our clients in the best way that we can. And so it is not something we have surveyed residents on.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I think that that's a fantastic argument for keeping it annual, as far as the evidence that you've seen in the past that the safety and living conditions deteriorate much more quickly if we do it every other year instead of every year. I think that's a great argument, and thank you.
Well, and I think it's rare that you would ever hear our staff come in front of you and be like, "We'd like to do more work." In this
Right.
situation, we have determined as a team that the more work going in annually instead of every other year actually saves work on the long end, although it is an upfront investment on an annual basis. And so when it first came out that we had this option and we tried it, we were very excited until we realized the repercussions.
Yeah, and that makes sense for all sorts of management issues where if you don't keep on top of it, it makes it much harder in the long run to keep things in good condition than if you do keep on top of it and if you spend a little bit more time on a regular basis rather than putting it off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The deferred maintenance coming out of those experiences, the most recent one being COVID, was phenomenal and took, speaking on the public housing unit side, because we also were limited in our ability to inspect public housing units during the pandemic, the catch-up work for maintenance was phenomenal, because what may have been a loose hinge on a cabinet door that we would have caught and tightened up, then now is a ripped out hinge, because over time it's going to get looser and looser. And so we were dealing with things that, had they been addressed, they were this small. And now we were dealing with something and a cabinet door is a small example. Thank heavens, water leaks, amazingly expensive. But it's that addressing sooner rather than later, and then having to address the deferred maintenance that goes along with it. So thank you for that comment. It is exactly where we landed as a staff when considering options.
And things like mold growth, I don't want to even
Absolutely.
imagine that anybody's living for an extra year in a place with mold, for example. So I'm absolutely in favor of the yearly inspections.
Thank you for that input.
I agree, and I think the communication is a really big part of that. I feel like the more you can have communication with the landlords, the better the whole system would be. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to general business, and we'll stay with Sarah for the director's report.
Thank you. I wanted to start with saying a thank you to all of you for, as we approach the end of the year. I'm always thinking back about all the stuff we've done and looking forward into the next year. And I know, we all know as staff, that volunteer board members make all the difference in the world. And your participation on this board, on having input, on reading agendas, all of the pieces that you do to provide us guidance, input, and oversight is incredibly valuable. So I really want to say thank you. Thank you, Lori, for joining us. We are excited to have you, especially as a participant. And so we realized that this is, if you had a spare hour or 2 hours in your month, you would think, what I should do is I should go to a board meeting. That's not what people would choose to do. So we really appreciate the fact that you do choose to do that with us. We are reaching near full staffing, knock on wood. And for the first time in about 3 years, we're encountering hiring processes where we have to make a hard decision to hire. In the past few years, it's been difficult to hire. It's just not us, nationwide, in some cases globally, difficult to hire. And we're like, well, okay, we'll underfill and train, that type of thing. For the first time in many years, that's not where we are. And it's weird and welcome that we have excellent candidates where we're being forced to really figure out which one is best suited for what we're hiring for, who has a skill set that fits, and we are getting some people with experience. That doesn't always happen in the world of housing. And so we have a new housing services specialist on the public housing side, Erica, and she comes to us with experience from other housing programs, including Flagstaff Shelter Services. She has some income qualification experience. She has worked alongside the front door and continuum of care. I could not be more excited. And she started the Monday before Thanksgiving, poor thing. Because we're like, hi, welcome. And now we're all gone. So we have hired, Sharice mentioned this a little bit ago. We were successful in hiring a housing navigator who's been a housing navigator. And so she's coming to us from Tennessee. She does have family here locally, and she brings with her things like being Inspire certified. And so again, we're getting somebody who comes to us with experience. We're not training from the ground up. We have new front counter staff. I noticed Deanna's on here. Deanna, we just adore. She came to us as a temp. She applied to join us permanently and is an amazing asset at the front counter. She is incredibly patient. She is incredibly skilled, and she's doing a heart. I love having her at the front counter. I'm hoping will be with us for a very long time, and I know has already expressed interest in other positions within our agency as well. And so I do like growing our own as well. She comes to us with some housing experience as well, which is helpful. We have 2 front counter positions. The other one we have filled. And again, we had a couple candidates where we're like, well, which one do we choose? Which is a really great place to be. And so she shall start in January. The navigator will start in January, and the housing services specialist started in the Monday before Thanksgiving. We do have an open maintenance 1 position that should advertise on Friday. And so the previous staff person took a job in water services. So they didn't leave the organization, which is always fun, but instead transitioned over to water services. We are plugging along with serving as many people, of course, in the community as we can. We've encountered some software system snafus that have been challenging for staff to work through and have been taking some time. Tracy and Susan have spent significant time on audits. So, of course, the city has its overall audit because we have large spending federal programs. We're subject to single audit requirements as well as programmatic pieces that are audited. We, of course, fee manage Clark Holmes, who has a separate audit with a separate auditing company. And it all happens at the same time, right when the city budget deadlines are starting. So Tracy and Susan deserve large kudos for finishing last year, starting the year that hasn't yet started because it's not till July, plus all of our regular business. And so audit time is often stressful, not because we're worried about what people will find. If they find something, of course, it's always an opportunity for improvement for us. But there's a lot of documents to provide, and sometimes auditors don't have a background in housing. And so it's providing the document and then explaining, okay, well, here's where it fits, and here's the regulation, and here's the other pieces that go with it. So that's been a significant lift as well. I know I've talked a lot about staffing, and that's where a lot of my time has been being invested as well. So we are plugging along. We do have a new HUD field office director who has come to us from much larger housing authorities, LA, Chicago. And we are working on figuring out how to work together. He's different than our previous one. And so, of course, we're working on those relationships with HUD as well. Next month, you may see a request for a special meeting in between now and our next regularly scheduled meeting near the end of January. And that is because we have an opportunity to expand our Section 8 program. And it's a pretty intricate thing. When we have that meeting, this will be the only item on the agenda. So the board has the appropriate time for us to explain, for you to ask questions, and for us to, not us to, for you to determine a recommendation on moving forward with a proposed program expansion or not, what it means for our community. etc. So you'll see, I'm lining things up. There's, we have to work with HUD, and we're working with attorneys. We're working with another community. We're working with numerous folks and entities to line this up so that we can bring you a comprehensive package that can answer your questions rather than coming to you 12 times with, okay, and now we know this piece. So watch for that. I may not be successful in getting everything done I need to get done before our next meeting. But if not a special meeting, then it will be at our next meeting. And of course, as this board is a recommending body on something like this, that final decision will rest with City Council. However, I do know that City Council will be looking to this body for a strong recommendation one way or the other. It's critically important that this board understand and make a recommendation. So a little bit of foreshadowing. Sorry, it's so vague. She's not at the point where I can throw the details on the table yet, because it could cause some apprehension for some folks that could be directly impacted, only because it's a change in housing for folks that are even in administration that are housing vulnerable is stressful. And so we're working very carefully to make sure that that message is crafted in a way that does not create fear and apprehension for those currently being served, because it will not impact their ability to be housed in any way, shape, or form. And with that, thank you for listening to me, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Sarah? You did a good job.
Oh, well, thank you.
And thank you to the housing staff that has worked very hard over the last 12 months and continue to always work very hard. I feel like we have an amazing housing staff. Board member comments. Oh, there's a board member comment right there.
Here.
Thanks, Brenda.
Anybody else? Okay, so the next currently scheduled meeting is Thursday, January 16th at 9 a.m. And we'll await information if there's going to be something called in between. I want to wish you all a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next month. I will adjourn the meeting, and it is 10:07. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Okay, Caleb, are you still there?
Let me stop the recording as we lose quorum.
Okay.
And stop recording.